All right, so I'm going to call us into order. And it is 5:02. So we have one guest, Mr. Frank Frantz. Right. So welcome again, representing the town's finance committee, right?
Correct. Representative Town Meeting Finance.
And I don't think we have any other different guests. Do we?
I can introduce Kelly Diaz, who is your third grade teacher from Academy School.
Okay, she's here last time too, yes?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Got it later.
Okay.
And Mary Kaufman's here, as she was an admin intern last year.
You're back because you liked it so much. I'm glad to see you.
Did we feed you last year?
So can we have a motion for the approval of the agenda and the warrants and the minutes?
So moved.
I didn't get the minutes until very recently, so can we exclude the minutes until we get a chance to read them and do them next time? I think they just came in today's email.
It came yesterday,
Oh, I didn't see them until today.
but that's,
There
Well,
was
go
a
ahead,
revised
go ahead.
edition.
there was a revised edition last night or this morning or something too, so it hasn't been
Right,
forever.
I'll
All right, so let's do a motion to approve the agenda and the warrants. Yes?
So, okay, then I retract my previous motion and move to approve the warrants and the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then a quick discussion about the minutes, which, that's a good point, because Kim Rock is not here at the moment. She was supposed to be coming, and Kim Price would normally do it, but she is not here. So, Mark, you would like to do it, or Dave? Both of you two take good notes. Or I can take it right into the
He
computer.
takes
Don't worry.
better than I
You
do.
can take it on the computer?
I'll take it right in the
I had to get paper.
No, I'll do it right
I'm sure you started. Call me Ishmael, and we'll go from there.
here. All right, so, a quick discussion about the minutes I wanted to have with,
Volunteer, she could,
do you want to do it?
I'm happy to do it if you'd like me to.
see, there's a happy person.
If you're happy, I'd love to.
Happy.
I have my laptop.
Okay.
Thank you, Kim. Kelly.
Kim was asking me questions on the minutes, and I wish she were here though to have that discussion. So maybe we'll come back to that and just make sure that we've just changed to a new person. So that last meeting would be her first time in taking minutes, so she wasn't exactly sure how much we wanted written down. And so it would be a discussion to have for a few seconds and just see where we all feel on that. So she had some clear guidance. However, she's not here, so we'll move on. We'll come back.
So you want pretty much everything. I did read the minutes from last time. Like, is that a good example of how I should be?
Well, and that's the discussion, because before we were doing basically just such a thing, budget was discussed.
Right.
And that's it, and that's the minimum that's required by law, I understand. However, there's other folks who like to have some bullet points, and which was more what Kim had done, even further than bullet points. So,
Looks like a lot
Aren't there numerous examples
of how to do it.
existing
Previous minutes.
past
Yeah,
meetings
previous
that you
minutes.
could look at?
yeah, but the question still comes up whether that's what we want. I mean, I've had people say, for example, our December meeting was a rarity, but it was one that we didn't have filmed. We were over in Putney, and people were looking for those minutes to see what we discussed about, for example, in the budget, and all it said was, the budget was presented and discussed. And it was about an hour-long conversation, but the summary that was in the minutes.
Right.
So, what is your feeling on this, folks? What would you like to see in the minutes?
Go ahead. No, I was gonna say something like minutes can tend to be ponderous. I encourage brevity and concise as opposed to lengthy and,
Okay.
that's just me.
Yeah, they have to, obviously, they have to have the motions and the votes.
Yeah.
And they're the actual record of what happens, even though everything's on the videos. I think if, just basically what you said, Mark, the topics on the agenda that we talked about, and if there are things that we want included in the minutes, as a reminder, or for, to come up the next meeting or something, we can ask for things to be, just say, please include that in the minutes. I think I did that last week. I didn't have a chance to read and see if it happened or not.
Todd, I was gonna let Todd go first.
No, I agree
Okay.
with all of that.
So I just gave Kelly November's minutes because I think they're reflective
More
of our
reflective,
typical
yeah.
minutes, and just for tonight, since Kelly's volunteering to do it.
So just type up November's and change the date.
Well, I mean, one of the things that strikes me is when we do the administrative reports, for example, we could just say, and Mary Ross gave the administrative report from Academy School, and that's it. But again, to me, that doesn't say anything about what we're doing in the meeting. I mean, somebody could pick up our minutes and then say, okay, so they met and they listened to a bunch of administrative reports, they discussed the budget, and everybody went home. I mean, that isn't very representative of any of our discussion and our concerns.
But
I
the
kind of-
motions and the votes and those things are all being recorded as well, so you can see if we talked about something and then and there was an action, it's right there in the notes.
But most of what we do, we don't vote on. I mean,
Yeah, we don't move much.
we do the agenda, by the time you get done with this meeting, you're gonna we approve these warrants and haven't approved the minutes, we've tabled that because we didn't have them. And then we'll take committee reports and that'll just say, we heard committee reports, it won't say what they're about. On unfinished business, so Act 46 is still unfinished, and we'll just say, heard an update, the discussion on the budget, if we decide to approve it, that's it, but we won't say, oh, but we're concerned about the social worker, and we want to discuss further about social worker or technology or something. That wouldn't show up in there.
But we do have an audio-visual record of these meetings. Just thought I'd throw that out for grins and
Most
giggles.
of the time, yeah.
Most of the time.
December, we didn't, which is the first time in about 3 years, 4
Yeah.
I
years.
mean, I like that there be a little bit more, it's just hard to describe how much more is enough. So, and it makes the note taker have to decide how to summarize what we talked about.
I kind of like what you'd said too, Dave, where we'd say, oh, that's real important, let's make sure that gets in the minute.
Mhm.
Yeah, that might be the easiest way, if we can remember to
Well,
do that.
all right, maybe we could set a list of checkpoints, like members of the board present, the school administration present, names of the guests that are present, and then those are givens, and then maybe set a priority list for everything else.
I guess I'm thinking too, if we get to like administrative reports, so instead of Mary Ross reported on Academy, it'd be
Academy reported.
Mary reported on Academy, highlights, and 1, 2, 3.
Yeah,
And it's
something
just,
like that,
no,
sure.
one phrase on each thing, not even a full sentence.
Yeah, we can see how that goes.
Okay, it'll have to be left up
And,
to the
it's
discussion.
really more important to have this conversation with the actual report.
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
point.
However, she's gonna do what we say, so I guess we've had the discussion and some consensus, but again, we don't have a motion on that,
Right.
so it wouldn't show up in the minutes.
So what did you say about our discussion of the minutes?
I could do those, let me write those
This is
up.
what I wrote, that the discussion of what to include in the minutes, how much do we need to include, brevity is encouraged. They need to have the motions because that's the record of the meeting. It would be nice to hear a bit about what each school report includes, highlights will be included.
So you
That's
got it.
great.
You got it, yeah.
Every other week, you have a job.
First and third Wednesday.
Okay, well, when
We'll pay
Kim,
Kim, but she'll take.
when Kim comes, we'll pass that along then. It was a good discussion, thank you all. Then that moves us to Mary Ross of Academy School.
Prophetic.
Good evening, everyone. I don't have a written report because we did that in
Last
the
week.
month of January. Just some things I want to highlight. Eileen Parks, with help from Amy Major and Sam Fowler, completed the Many Moons James Thurber production, the play. And it was beautifully done. The children did a wonderful job, and the staff did a nice job leading them.
And that was not the New England Youth Theater program, that's the Academy
No, that was
Theater.
our, school program, Although children are involved in the New England Youth Theater program, I believe this weekend. We will be beginning winter walking soon, now that we have some winter. Hopefully we can hang on to it. Matt Johnson, our PE teacher, coordinates most of that, with support from our para-educators at our school, and also Amy Major, our nurse. So that's a great opportunity for kids to be out there and be healthy and draw attention to being active this time of year. Happens during recess time. Tomorrow, I'm going to pass around a flyer. Sorry for the late notice, but we're having a parent and community information night for families. Our academic support teachers are presenting a session on math concepts and strategies targeted at the different grade levels of each student and academy, as well as Detective Eric Johnson coming in to speak about how parents can encourage their children to use technology safely, which is certainly an emerging topic as kids get more and more connected at home as well as school. Finally, January 26th, a week from tomorrow, we're going to be having another parent night. The purpose of the evening, it will be from 6 to 7:30, is to celebrate our diverse school community and really show support for all families, especially families that might be feeling vulnerable at this time, to sort of reach out and come together. We'll have a time for activities and there will be some food served as well. It's a nice time together. That's a snapshot of what's going on in the academy right now, so I'm going to pass this down.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mark? Mark, this one.
Okay. Just wanted to highlight our winter sports program is up and running. Just completed week 2. Kids were coming back from Mount Snow as we were gathering for our meeting. So we've had 2 really good Wednesdays. Last Wednesday was nice and warm. It was great for the outdoor activities, and today we had some fresh snow to play with. So 2 weeks down, 2 to go. Just this week, we were highlighted in a Farm to School Food Connects newsletter. There was a nice article written about our breakfast program that we've created here at Green Street. So we're serving close to 70% of our students breakfast every morning, which is a huge increase from previous years. One of the challenges that brought was more waste. More trash, more compost. So we applied for a grant and received a grant through the New England Dairy Food Council's Fuel Up to Play 60 grant program. And we were awarded money to construct and build some bins for each classroom in the building. So our head custodian, Eugene Frost, designed it, built the bins. They've been working great. It's really turned our program into kind of all of our angles are covered right now. It's really, really smooth sailing. So it was a nice article.
Those bins got reported to the Waste Management District too.
Oh, okay.
So it was a great new design that everybody wants to steal.
So that's a copy of the article. I'll forward it as an email after the meeting, so you can take a look at it.
Mark, a question while you're on the topic. How long does it take to serve breakfast in Linwood? What's the bite out of the day?
It's 15 minutes.
15 minutes?
Yeah.
And it's done before classes start, really, right?
Kids come off the playground at 8 o'clock, and by 8:15, we're starting morning meeting.
Okay.
So when the kids come in, the meals have already been delivered to the classrooms. So they come, their meals are right there. It's very efficient.
Good.
You said what percentage of students are?
70%. It's great. Yeah. So more than double.
So that's a lot more.
Yeah. More than double the participation last year. So it's been a
So
great
it
way to
goes
start
to,
our mornings.
does the child have to decide if they want to eat, or there's just available in the classroom and everybody who wants it takes it?
They decide on a weekly basis.
So they say at the beginning or end of, on a Friday, I'm gonna take breakfast next week?
Exactly. Yeah.
Is that
Or
how it
they'll
works
choose
for
like
them?
3 out of the 5 days
Okay.
based on what the menu offerings are.
Is that how it works at Academy? No, right?
Children elect the day of.
So that morning they come in, they say, gee, I'd like to have breakfast, or no?
They come in at 7:50 or later and they can choose to eat breakfast that day or not. Something else we've also started to implement is down in our kitchens, and the staff have prepared to-go breakfasts. So if a student comes in late, they're able to still grab a breakfast from the office on their way in. So we're seeing a rise in participation there.
And do you know how much?
Percentage of participation, I don't know, but I can get that to you.
And then Jeri, I'm curious how it works for.
So our students start arriving at 7:45, and so we serve breakfast in the cafeteria from 7:45 to 8:15. So it's come as you wish. After 8:15, which is the bell, then it becomes a grab and go situation. Kira Sawyer
Hartigan.
prepared, because we had our school food service committee meeting a couple weeks ago. And so she prepared kind of an outline comparison between 2015 and 2016. And so I'm looking at that right now. I don't have it for you, but it wasn't funny. But like for example, last November, we were serving about 23% of our students, and now we're at 34%. So our numbers are going up. They're not 75% by any means, but we're also not delivering necessarily to the classroom.
That's the reason why I ask, because it just seems to me that your way makes it easier for a child, because at the other two, they have to decide to not go out for recess or not be with their friends, unless their friends are all going in for that lunch. I'm just speaking as a mom, and that's what I hear too.
I'll say that's true, but I also think that if the kiddo wants to grab and go breakfast, after that point, they have that opportunity to.
Yeah.
That's kind of the balance of which do you want to encourage the most?
Yeah.
Kids eating, which means everybody would come in because they'll come with their friends and they'll eat, or get into class.
And as I have a daughter, it will always be the social.
Do you think it's different with boys?
I don't know. My sons actually would have eaten, I
If I
think.
could remember, I'd like to know.
Okay. Did you have anything else?
Well, the system for us has been a nice adjustment. Couple other quick ones, Town School Theater Program, the connection with NEYT, Oak Grove Academy, and Green. They'll be presenting their play this weekend, Friday night, Saturday matinee, Saturday night, and Sunday matinee.
Wow.
I
What
don't
is it?
recall the title.
Wait, Saturday matinee and night?
I believe so.
Wow, we gave them the full thing. And Sunday matinee.
Do you remember the title?
I was looking at
Yeah.
it.
Something good, for sure.
Yeah. But they've been working on it for a long time now, and it's always a terrific play to go to. It's really a nice collaboration. That's on our third year in running. And tomorrow's our third Thursday. We have a tradition, the third Thursday of every month. We have school sing every Thursday. The third Thursday, we provide an article for our parents and coffee and donuts in the library. So it's a nice community builder that we have throughout the year. And
Looks
the
like
only,
it's Brimley's? Does that sound?
Something like, yeah, something.
yes.
Brimley's and the Great British Feud of 1826. I don't know
That's
why
it.
you didn't all remember that.
That's it.
Yes, Ellen.
And then just noticing on future agenda items, we have a discussion around the tech integration position, and then a report out from Academy on the social worker position. I did provide some handouts that I can give during that discussion in terms of what our tech integration position looks like here at Green, as well as some of the initiatives that we have going on through our counseling department, which I think is pretty innovative. So I can hand those out at that time and speak to it then.
Sure.
Just a few things, and certainly winter sports have started last week for our grades 4, 5, 6, including Mount Snow, cross-country skiing, skating, and sledding options. We skipped this Tuesday, we go every Tuesday, and so they'll start back up the next Tuesday. So fourth through sixth first, and then we do our K-3 program. So that's great. The other highlight is last week we had 6 students join other 6th through 8th graders up at Landmark College for a continuation of the summer middle school leadership conference. So it's 2 days in the summer, and then we have a follow-up training in January. It was supposed to be at SIT, but it got flooded out. We went back to Landmark. They had some water breakage or something. Anyway, the kids had a great time. They were workshops for the students that I think almost all of them were run by, well, at least a collaboration with high school students and some adults. And then the adults also had their own individual workshop. It was wonderful. I mean, we had lunch together, and the kids that from Oak Grove were just thrilled. They were, how was your day? And sometimes in the summertime, they're like, well, it was okay, because I'm thinking in the summer they want to do someplace else. But they were like, yeah, they were fired up. They had it was a great turnout, and just really exciting for them. So.
If I could just add to
Of course.
that, we had over 90 middle schoolers, grades, I guess, 5th as well?
6.
Okay, 6th, 7th, and 8th. It was really a great day.
90 from where? No.
Our district, SU. The day before, we got a call that SIT had this water damage and they couldn't host us. And through contacts with Landmark, they were able to take us in 1 day's notice, including the food service, which was amazing. The kids really enjoyed it. The workshop sessions, I was really proud of the high school students. That one class that I work with on a regular basis, those high school students did a series of 3 workshops, rotating workshops with the younger kids. And we just got the evaluations back, and all the younger kids thought that session was awesome. Kayla Sims with the AWARE students did another workshop, again, cycling 3 groups through, and that was fantastic. So it was really great. Really appreciate the principals and the adult supporters that are able to support the student leadership during the year, and certainly that were there that day. It was really helpful. So good planning for next summer, the continuation of that.
And the same kids go, the ones that identified themselves, and this is something that children say they want to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And anybody who says they want to do it can do it. And then they do it in the school year, and they automatically continue on for the summer. Yes?
Well, there'll be another recruitment for the summer, because some kids are
It's not
moving
the
on
same
to
everything.
middle school.
Yeah, so like the elementary 6th graders move on to hopefully join the middle school student leadership group that attends. We oftentimes have, like right now, I think we have approximately 12 to 14 students during the school year that are very actively involved with student leadership activities. But in the summertime, with that summer leadership, it's not limited to us. But the summer oftentimes limits, kids have so many other things going on. And so we had 8 students who attended the 2 days in the summer, and then 6 that were interested in continuing on and went to the January session. But that doesn't necessarily indicate that we're only having a student leadership body of 6. We have double placement. Other thing that I thought that I would just briefly highlight is that yesterday, one of our faculty meetings, we looked at our STEP with our STEP program, our behavior data. Spent a lot the entire time just focused on we're a PBIS school, and so our universal behavior supports that we have in the entire school, and then all the way up into our Tier 3 STEP students that are receiving additional intensives, referred to as STEP services. The progress that they're making, how many minutes they're out of class, what kind of improvements they're making, even within the classroom setting, how we compare with other type of major referrals from last year to this year. And, we're making progress, but even if, there's progress that's being made, but it was really important for us as a staff to really kind of dive deep into that data, and do some personal analysis with what's happening in our school, our classes, on a universal as well as a tiered system. So we spend a lot of time on that. And then this afternoon, one of our other committees, our our MTSS, our school action plan committee that's working with the SWIFT organization. We were also kind of going back and perusing some of our priorities. And one of the things that oftentimes we are low in when we're doing our own self-assessment is family and community involvement, which it's like, well, we have all these community events and we have lots of families and parents coming to those events. But the thing that we need to think about how to engage families and parents to help us with some of the decision making, like on committees. And one of the things that we looked at was our parent survey, and that our numbers were really low in terms of our response rate. So we spent a lot of time this afternoon talking about like how do we get more parents involved, how to to respond to a parent survey. Our survey results were wonderful, but is that really a good representation? So we'll be spending, our school-wide action committee, spending some time looking at how to get parents behind the scenes, not just at our community events, but really to be more involved with some of the committees.
Jeri,
For any ideas.
Yeah, could we get, you mentioned the minutes out of class and the referrals compared to previous years and stuff. Could you, not right now, but in the future meeting, kind of share that with us? Kind of present the way that's going?
Yes, yeah.
Great.
I mean, we used a PowerPoint. I wouldn't bore you with the entire PowerPoint that we had yesterday. But I have to tweak a little bit to be able to names, in that PowerPoint.
And just something that how it's informing, or maybe even not the data so much as how it's informing, how the information you're getting is informing what you're doing. Great, thank you.
I've got 2 letters of retirements. One, Linda Jewett-Bell from Academy School, and the other one is Gail Stahley from Green Street School.
I think I've heard that.
I have two.
Yeah, I heard her old man's retiring.
Yeah, I would have thought you'd pick up the slack or something.
So if we could have a motion to accept these with regret.
Yes.
Yeah, regretfully, we so moved.
And the second, Dave, is that
Yep.
you? And any discussion? And all in favor?
Aye.
So the second part of that I forgot when I was reading through the minutes is that we decided as a board that we were going to have a discussion each time we accepted a resignation or a retirement, either way, and not just assume that position would be automatically refilled, but rather have a discussion about that. And we had one last week, or 2 weeks ago, and I forgot that we had
Come up with that
come up with
proviso.
that proviso, yes, and we didn't discuss it. So these two, this is a,
Classroom teacher and academic support.
and then last time.
Was a classroom teacher's question.
Oh,
So
2
any-
classrooms and academic support.
Yeah.
And these are effective at the end of the school year?
Yeah.
So is there any discussion, or otherwise we would just have a motion? I think that we would have those positions rehired and go forward.
Would we need a motion?
Well, that was what we talked about, yes, so that it's something that we don't just automatically assume anybody who leaves automatically we replace that position, but that the board would discuss it and think it through whether that makes sense. For example, maybe when somebody leaves, we say, it's the academic support, these two aren't positions that we would look at normally. But we talked about a technology support that we changed around before last year. Mark, I believe you did.
Yes? Okay. Well, I brought that up.
Academic support position.
You changed an academic support to a different position? No.
No.
Somebody did last year.
No, there were paras that
That
were
was
reduced,
Thank you.
and it was through the budgeting process
Right.
to develop an academic support.
Right.
And quite frankly, that's usually where this occurs, is during principals with us,
Right.
developing the budget and thinking, okay,
And
so
wouldn't that
so
depend on
people are
enrollment?
retiring, and based on enrollment, classroom teachers, looking at the number of sections that we know we need, academic support with the financial support from the federal government. So those are all considerations.
Right.
It's also hard to know, I mean, we would want you to have to come in every time and would say, what would you do if we didn't replace that person?
Mhm.
'Cause, if we told you you had to replace the person, you would figure something out, but that wouldn't be.
The reason that
It
we
wouldn't
talk-
necessarily be a good idea or a
It
good.
doesn't seem like an
positive.
appropriate time to make a decision like that. I mean, a discussion's fine
Hmm.
for our knowledge, like, is that a position that's renewed every year, or is this an extra position that was created? Then that goes in the notes, and we know that for future reference, but it seems inappropriate a little bit to try to make a sweeping decision right then, when really our decisions around staffing come during the budgeting process, when we're looking line by line at all these jobs.
I would say that's absolutely true, except that that's not been my experience on the board.
What do you mean?
My experience has been that we had a discussion in the past where we said, well, we want to talk about that position, and we were told not to bring it up at that time, not at that time, not at that time, and then all of a sudden the position was already hired. So it was a discussion that we had a little while ago of, just to be clear, so that things are not, especially when we look at declining enrollment in general and tightening of budgets. It's not a discussion saying that we think that the administrators are off hiring people because they just want to hire people, but rather that we're all on the same idea and that we are moving forward together.
Maybe with this one, I think that a second grade teacher, it's pretty evident that, that we saw the numbers, I think, at the last meeting, and it's evident that we need two second grade sections here. But we might ask for the academy staff to look at that administrative support position and see if they can do without it, rather than automatically fill it.
And what do you-
Because it's really difficult
I agree.
to make a decision about whether you need somebody. We don't know, and you do. And, but I think it's reasonable to say, take a look and see if there isn't something we might be able to.
So I just reiterate that that's what we do with the budget development process.
Yeah.
We look at the staffing, we look at academic support, look at the number of students that that person's going to be working with. We do that with the special ed staffing. So it's, and then we present it. So, I don't know, I agree with Todd. That's the process that we use.
Well, I'm just trying to feel like, can't we be more active in that process when those presentations happen?
Sure,
And
yeah.
asking those harder questions, like, if we were getting a budget that we felt was too much of an increase, or if we were looking at a line from 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 1 year ago, and then all of a sudden that line is extremely a lot more, wouldn't that be our opportunity? Instead of, I'm trying to answer we've brought it up before and been told not to bring it up, and then it just goes by the wayside.
Yeah, and
Isn't that our opportunity to question those columns line by line, or no?
Yes, it is. And anytime you see a bump in a line item like that for staffing, we're going to talk about it. We're going to present why we're doing this. I don't know where you've been told, not at this time, not at this time. I mean, it's always during the budget development time.
So I think that the example that I recall most clearly is the one I mentioned last month, at our last meeting, where we had a librarian retire, and we had just come back fresh from a school board association thing where they were saying, you can cut out these different positions. So we were looking, we had the nurses in, you remember, in fact, the nurses came here and explained to us that actually we don't need 3, we need 6. But we can't, that there is a need. But the conversation was around, because we have a half-time librarian that Oak Grove and Green Street shared. And the proposal was, I remember Jen saying that she was going to use the librarian, half-time librarian, or approximately split the job for tech support for the teachers, because that's what they were doing, it's something that was needed. And, but we never, and then that was an idea, and then it was in place. We never really came back and said, okay, let's do it that way. It just went along. So I think, that's the one example that I remember. And it makes sense that would happen in the normal course of things, because you make your proposals, and if we don't say, cut, it's too much money, then you go with the proposals that are going to serve your needs best. So it's almost like on a case-by-case basis that we'd have to.
I'm not looking to create all sorts of dissension here. I'm just pointing out that we've had this conversation before, and the discussion was that we would have a discussion just so that we're all clear and on the same page of hiring and moving forward, and then not in this position like Dave just remembered and explained, that all of a sudden somebody was hired and we were thinking something else was gonna be happening, or possibly be happening, or that we were going to be discussing and it was done.
But for me, like if something came up that seemed like a position you could do without administrative support, was the example that was given. And all of a sudden in the moment, we're like, oh, okay, she's retiring or he's retiring, that's great. Let's do away with that. Mark, let's do away with that position next year. It would be hard for me to vote. I guess I could not vote, right? If I didn't know the numbers. Like if I didn't have the context of
What's
the
the
entire
effect?
budget, like, you know, if you can, I kind of feel like if we're heading towards budgets that are lower across the board in terms of lowering the tax rate, and we have that responsibility, that if things are within the budget, I trust Mark to say he needs administrative support or whatever. I mean, I don't know. I would want to know the numbers to know what I was saying no to or yes to versus just, oh, it's always a good idea to save money. Just do away with that position.
Well,
I know that's not what you're advocating. I'm just saying, like, that's where it goes for me. Like, in the moment when that comes up, unless we can see, okay, this is how much it cost, and this is what, it'd be hard for me to just vote on it without that budget context.
Administrators have any thoughts to throw in at this point?
I feel like
I like what Ron said. I think when we develop our budget, we're developing a budget with the needs we feel that we need to be successful in our schools. So then those positions are in the budget each year.
It is, it's also very, I think Todd made the point as well, that it's so many of the programs are interconnected. So it is part of a plan and a system, as opposed to simply one piece that may have a different timeline in terms of employment than a fiscal cycle, but those things have been considered within the resources that that seem to be reasonable from the community's point of view, based on experience at town meeting, so on. So the budget process lends itself to a systematic review of outcomes, goals, action plan, how do we accomplish that, what's our strategy. I think it's a good idea to revisit the plan periodically, quarterly, or even more often. So it's not a bad idea to sort of revisit the assumptions, but to consider changing the plan on a somewhat of a random event when we have a retirement that we didn't know about come up is probably not a strategic use of time that's effective.
Mary, what were you going to say?
I feel I would be remiss not to bring up at this time that academic support teachers as well as special educators are a really invaluable part of our academic staff, in addition to the classroom teachers. As Frank mentioned, it's a part of a system that's pretty cohesive in supporting the academic needs of students.
And to be clear, I'm not questioning that.
And I didn't mean to imply.
No, exactly. I'm questioning when the process is and why we had this discussion before.
And
So
I don't doubt that there isn't an appropriate time to say, look, we need to make cuts. This budget is, I'm wondering about the timing and then the.
right, and I'm wondering about the timing too, because I know it's happened in the past where at least I, sitting here, and I believe Dave would say the same, but where we thought something, and Mark too, we thought something was going to be questioned, and the person was already hired. And I don't want to be questioning after we've already hired. That seems completely irresponsible and just wrong on so many levels. So I'm trying to come up with a way not to cause dissension, but to be clear of when we would be doing this and how that process would be able to move forward in a reasonable, amicable, responsible format.
I would say that because it has been discussed at the school board meetings, we have placed a lot of trust in our superintendent, our school administrators, our business manager, that when the budgetary process comes up, to look at the staffing. And the staffing includes those that are currently working and those that are going to retire, those who may be hired, whatever, that we put enough trust in them that they are going to do what is sound fiscally and do what is wise among the 3 schools that we're looking at right now. That may change. We may be looking at more schools, or a different board will be looking at more schools. So you have a wider ability to take all of these moving parts that come to running a $50 million school area, to make it work. And the fact that we're questioning it is means they're going to be, Ron and his assistants are going to be looking at all the ways that it can be optimized and report back to us any clinks or ditches in the get-along. Am I correct in that, Ron?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when does the budgetary process start?
2 days ago.
Okay, yeah. So
It's going to continue tonight.
It's going to continue tonight. So we're into that
Well, I think
right
we're
now.
kind of going to have some of that discussion when we talk about the tech position and the social
Right.
worker position
Yeah,
right,
sure.
right here this evening, so.
Right.
So, thank you.
I just want to be very clear, not,
Yeah.
again, not looking for upheaval and disturbance, I'm just looking to be clear. All right, so did you have anything else, Ron? You were in the middle of your, no? Policy Council, Kim's not here, Deb's not here, I'm gonna skip that. Energy Committee,
We've not had a meeting for a bit, but a question was raised by a concerned citizen as to actual savings realized by the introduction of wood and pellet boilers in our school. Are there any figures on any savings that we have?
Yeah, we are
realized?
operating at a lower cost at the academy than we had been historically, because pellets are about 30% less than fuel oil. So that was the primary objective.
but
I
then we
think
also put in all the,
controls and so on, yeah.
Does that include, didn't we go over our fuel consumption, our projected fuel consumption last year?
More
Right,
pellets
we-
than we thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't have a control system installed, and it is installed now, and it's functioning well. I did just speak with Ricky Athier at Academy, and he's very pleased with the ability to evaluate room temperatures by zone. It was not something that he could do readily before, and not only observe, but change them, control them. And there are a couple of things still to follow up on. Whenever you disconnect projects that are intended to be integrated, you'll have things that are missing. Fortunately, as we move ahead with Green Street, and I did want to speak to that project, there's a fair amount to cover tonight on that project. Fortunately, as we move ahead with Green Street and possibly Oak Grove projects, we are looking at integrated systems, a heating plant and a control system, and maybe the thermal envelope that goes with the whole package. Holding a contractor accountable for an integrated system, and it's a much better approach than what we did at Academy. But despite that, we've done well. But I could give you a little trend data on maybe 3 or 4 years of fuel costs at Academy. It's still early, it's only
so the answer though is not so much the solar, the answer is that we put in the control
the
of the
pellet
pellets.
and the control. Yeah, the control system was vital, and we just didn't have the resources to do it at the beginning of the project.
So can we say we're gaining anything because we put in the solar?
So the solar,
He asked about the pellet. The
Pellets.
solar is,
Yeah.
the
Okay,
solar is a
sorry.
separate.
Solar is good too.
I thought the solar was one.
Let there be
question.
light.
okay, yeah,
We've
but-
got 3
but
years
it's
of
certainly,
data now. so-
yeah, relevant
Two.
to the energy committee issue. So the net metering agreement has been in place. We resolved the issue about signing up for more solar electricity than we could consume. So that has been resolved, and we are saving some money there. The contract says 10% off from the utility rate, so that's
So
happening.
there's a 10% of 90,000, if I remember that figure roughly
Right.
correctly.
Right.
That's $9,000.
Yep.
Okay, that's good.
Another thing about the pellet boiler and the controls is that I mean, the reason, I mean, energy saving is one reason to do that, but the other is to make people comfortable in the building, and it makes a big difference in terms of comfort to have that regulation.
No
And I
question about
think
it.
we might want to have a meeting before too long, and since it's too late to do the whole project at Academy now, but to talk about looking at the capital plan and replacing a few windows every year,
Oh, yes, yeah, that's a
just
good.
to help with that envelope.
Yeah, I thought I would do a quick review of that
Great.
tonight as
Oh,
part
great.
of our budget.
Is there an SU finance report?
I brought Frank along tonight to
Perfect.
talk about that.
Just
Any
to remind that
diverse-
there's a meeting
There's a
tomorrow
meeting
night.
tomorrow as well,
5
yes.
p.m., Central
5 o'clock.
office.
Sure.
Diversity, is there nothing?
Just an update in terms of, the committee has sent things out to each school about the May 5th celebration of diversity. It's the first Friday in May that we usually do this. And the theme is water justice. So we're hoping all schools will be part of that process. And more as we get closer to that.
Okay. Unfinished business, Act 46 update. We were supposed to meet last night. We canceled it because of the weather.
Yeah, but I seem to remember reading in the paper just recently that the town of Dummerston is going to
Dummerston
conduct
is
a
going to do a
revote.
revote. Yep.
And maybe a lot of what we
February 12th.
do in the Act 46 is going to hinge on the results of that revote.
That would be my report.
So, yeah, so they voted they signed enough signatures for a petition to do a revote February 21st.
And according to the paper, it's not just a simple revote. They
No,
actually
it's
have to
not a
have,
majority, is it?
it's a majority, but
Well, it's got to
then
be three, is it 3 times the number?
No, it's 2/3 of the majority.
not just a simple majority. It's a 2/3. Plus, it has to have as many people as voted before.
I
There was
don't.
Well, there's, yeah, I
There
read
was
that.
something in the
three
paper about
times,
that.
It
and
was
I
kind
could
of
I know, I
confusing.
still
figure
wasn't
it out.
getting it. What I understood is however many people voted the first time against it had to be outvoted the second time. You couldn't have such low turnout.
No.
No, the
That was the paper.
statute, the intent of the statute is to prevent a revote where you have an extremely low turnout. So, somebody was just saying,
Two-thirds.
Ron was saying, so you take the prevailing vote, so if the prevailing vote was no, then you take that number, does anybody remember what that was?
It was 182.
or something.
Yeah, it was an 18
84?
vote, 16, 18 vote,
Well, I don't know.
84?
What was-
84.
100 to 84.
184.
100
Oh, okay.
no's, 84 yes.
Okay, so you
So-
take 100, you
Yes.
take 2/3 of that, you have to have at least 67.
I can even do that math. I like that.
67.
67.
Votes
Favorable
favorable,
and lower against.
yeah.
Yeah,
As long as the
Ah.
the prevailing,
So it's not 2/3 of all the people that vote.
you know,
It's
No,
2/3 of the
no,
first.
no.
of the
That's right.
prevailing, yeah.
You're right,
See,
that
we
is
did
confusing.
misunderstand it
It
from the
is
way the
easy to
reformer had written
miss
it.
yeah.
Yes,
I agree.
That's nothing new there.
So that will be discussed at the next study committee meeting, which is set for June, or January.
I like it.
That would
We're not gonna
be
meet till June.
January 25th.
January
Where is that one,
25th.
I believe
Guilford?
that's gonna be in Guilford.
they get the agencies to come up with
It's a Wednesday.
it. That's pretty crazy.
Is that going to be a Putney?
Guilford.
Guilford.
6 o'clock in Guilford, right?
Yes.
25th,
Farmers Market's got 14 pages, rules everywhere.
6 o'clock. All right.
So basically, that's really all we could say on Act 46 at
Yeah.
the moment, is we're awaiting Dummerston's vote. And I guess the only other big thing is that we voted for a video to be produced and to move forward with that. And I think it's the 25th, actually, we're supposed to be filming.
That was an explanation, public informational video. Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah. So people, it'll be on a website, so people can go look at it and see whatever section they want.
Mightily bored they'll be.
And the next would be our big discussion on the budget.
Yep.
So Frank, welcome. We've gone through the
Right.
budget twice without you.
Yes, that's unusual, but I know Ron and Lyle did a great job, and obviously the principals know more than all of us, so been in good hands.
And while we're looking at it, I don't know how much you want to walk through it, but the next 3 items or so would be all part of this budget. The tech position in the budgets, and the social worker at Academy, and the preschool corporations, that's all in the budget already.
Okay. Well, the other things that are part of the budget, you're somewhat aware of them, but if you wouldn't mind, I would like to get a couple of items behind us, because they're significant. They're, in terms of money, they're more significant than those line items.
Oh, yeah.
And I just want to make sure that if the board's comfortable with that, we go through a couple of documents that need to be approved. And then I also have some signatures. It's a follow-up from earlier reviews that you've done around the Green Street project.
So do you have copies of the budget, or are you gonna put it up on the
I
screen?
do have copies of the budget, but if you brought your last version, we haven't changed it. So if you want a copy, here it is, and if you have your prior version, you will not need it.
Okay, please,
Who all needs one down that way, Mary? You guys are good?
No?
Franz, you're good over there?
We're back for next time.
We're good.
We're all
Everybody but
good?
me brings
Okay.
it.
Okay. So, I know Ron covered the capital plan, so I don't think, unless you have questions, I need to get into too much detail on the capital plan, but,
I would just say the cover line where it has the general fund with the capital fund, there was a little confusion about transferring some of that money, and I don't think we are.
yep, okay, right. We are not transferring money, but we are using the money in this current fiscal year, the $646,000, you remember, that was a line item in the budget. Maybe just to give you the reminder.
664 right here, the general fund, beginning fund balance.
It's almost that, but as a reminder of what we did in the current fiscal year, if you go to page 9 in the details, the thicker document, Mark, there's two.
The other one.
Did you
Yeah,
take
the
the
other.
thicker one, but Mark?
Mark got the capital plan, not the budget.
Now I got
Todd
this.
got the budget, not the capital.
Take two.
Take two, they're
Two.
small.
One, yeah, there's a
Now,
thick
page
detailed
9.
document and a summary document.
Page 9 and what you were in.
Okay, 9 is before 14, but after 7.
Very good.
Yeah, closer to seven.
I paid attention.
So this is just part of what I did. I did want to make sure that we covered some of the very significant assumptions that are different in the FY18 proposal versus the current year. So this is probably the single largest variance, or, and it's a favorable one. So page 9 at the very top, it's the transfer to capital. So as Ron had indicated, there was no assumption that we would transfer money from the general fund to the capital fund in fiscal year 18. But, Andy and others have asked, how can our taxes be down when enrollment is also down? Because we know how often that just is not the case. And here's one of the major reasons why. We have a reduction in the budget of $646,000 in this line item. However, this is all linked to several other assumptions, so it's not quite that simple. And that's why I wanted to start with the capital plan. So you see the 646 though is in the current plan, right? We appropriated that on the tax rate. We have that in the bank, and we are going to transfer that money any day now to the capital fund. The capital fund, if you look up page 1 that Ron started with, is starting the year with a negative 238. No surprise there. We've known that for over a year. What that is the residual of the academy project that hasn't been paid for. Remember, Brattleboro Town was ready to go forward, basically cutting the check all on the tax rate. But fortunately, Wyndham Wood Heat and the Clean Energy Development Fund came along while we were reevaluating that project, and we were able to secure about $80,000 in funding for that project. So that's why this number is not what that project costs. That project cost over $300,000. The residual, though, is the local share, and originally, when this goes back to when Jim was leaving and I was coming in, your plan was, and I believe you have an article in your town meeting that had authorized the board to borrow funds to pay
Yes.
for that.
That's what you were questioning, David,
Yeah.
I think, last time.
I'm not sure.
Well, we never borrowed funds because, number one, we anticipated some revenue that was not known at the time when you originally planned for this project. That's the Wyndham Wood Heat, Clean Energy Development money. And then we had this big spike in the pre-K enrollment, and the state changed a couple of laws, Act 166 and so on, that gave us this opportunity to create a substantial reserve, which we did this current fiscal year. This time last year, we saw all of this coming, and we created this reserve. Well, the point is that when that money gets transferred from the general fund over to the capital fund as planned, that's going to pay off that debt. It's going to pay off the 238, and the academy project will be paid for, and we will have never gone out and borrowed money to pay for it. But what it does is it reduces what we appropriated, in fiscal year 17, the number we just started with on page 9, 646,000. It reduces that. Obviously, we're going to spend it, but we're not spending all of it. In the end, we'll end up, if the board approves this plan and the voters approve it in March, 377,000 left over in a capital reserve fund. So that's on page 1.
Okay, it's not quite where we wanted to be in the reserve fund, though, is it?
It's pretty good in that it's a lot more than what we had thought might be available 2 or 3 years ago.
Okay.
So here's where there's a lot of things still to understand, and they're all connected. They're all part of this plan, and I'm guessing you already have a pretty good idea of this because Ron has talked about it. We've talked about it a number of times when I've been at your meetings. So if we now go to the capital plan, which is in the thinner handout, I give you 2 handouts. It's a thinner handout, and it's the spreadsheet that looks like this. We get the capital plan.
Right. Which one?
Okay, and I'm looking at page 105.
You want one of these for the camera? No?
So this is our 5-year capital plan. We've looked at this a few times. I just want to make sure that you understand the connections to the operating budget and the reserve, and then the article I'm going to ask you to consider approving for your warning. So the very first line in fiscal year 18 is Green Street School heating plant, $946,000. So I believe it was in August, Ron reviewed, and I reviewed with you the energy audit report. Looks like this. You probably have it in your files. Remember this?
We had other people coming in and talking to us too.
Yes.
Right,
Yeah. So this outlines the project. It identifies the components of the cost. It assumes some revenue, grants, Clean Energy Development Fund, and so on. But when we ask to do a project, the board needs authorization to spend the full amount. This document, if you went back and reminded yourselves of it, it's net of some revenues. And I've reminded folks that deal with schools, don't do that because it's confusing. Give us the whole project cost, and because we need that authorization to spend. So that's how we get from what you've seen from the professional engineer to this number, 946,000.
And this is a full project, no controller systems later on or anything.
That is correct.
And Frank, that's also on page 8 in the budget.
That's right. That's right. So, on page 5, if we take one school at a time, page 5 is Green Street on this capital plan. So what we are doing here is we're making sure that somehow we got 946,000 plus the Green Street proposal includes 30,000 for a retaining wall in fiscal year 18. So we're looking for, making sure that somehow we've got $976,000 worth of improvements financed, either through the tax rate, through grants, or through loans. The loan is the article that I would like to ask you to consider this evening. That's up to $350,000. You see that on the bottom of page 5. Okay, I'm explaining how to pay for the 976. $30,000, I'm recommending that we draw from our own capital reserve fund. That's back on page 1. I've already illustrated that for you. We have plenty of money to do that. So that's 350 plus 30, and now we need 596 somewhere in this plan, this budget, to build this project. So that is in the Green Street portion of the detailed budget. So if you go to your detailed budget, see if I could find the page for you. It's in the Green Street building section. It's on page, we had a copier problem. Oh yeah, it's page 14, but the copier ate mine. It flipped to page 14, so it's not in a good sequence, but it is in your package. It's page 14, and you see it. Yeah.
12, 14, 13.
Yeah, so you got the copier ate a page.
I talked to him.
But everybody see it?
Yep.
It's the biggest number on the page there, it's 626,000. Okay, so what that is the 596 that we're talking about for, financing the energy project, plus 30 grand to do the retaining wall, because we're not saying we need financing for that, we're just putting it into our operating budget.
Fund, yeah.
So that's where that number comes from.
Frank, just for the sequencing of my brain, where does it show how, whether it's 626 or 646 or 551 is getting transferred from the reserve fund we have now into our revenues to pay for this?
Okay, so that's a good question. It's typical for municipalities to do these transactions out of a capital fund. But I looked at the way in which the Brattleboro Town Capital Reserve was created. And it was created a little bit differently than what's standard. And that is why I was wondering why Brattleboro Town School District's capital fund does not have a cash account. And it goes back to the article that created the reserve fund is under the assumption that it avoids borrowing costs to the district. So it's kind of like the capital reserve fund is set up to be like an interim loan, and that is essentially how we've used it. So the point is, we're doing minimal transfers because the transactions are coming right out of the general fund.
In other words, the 400,000 additional that we put in last year's budget is in our general fund.
It is in our general fund.
So it's not even in a separate...
It is not at this time, but I am recommending that we do separate a line item transfer, that we do actually make that transfer. It will be a very challenging accounting project if we don't run a conventional reserve fund where you have a cash account, you have either a receivable and or a payable, and you have a fund balance that says the board set aside this amount of money for these projects over.
And sometimes, I can't remember when, but in the past we've had to say, we want this bond, or we want to put this money here, and this is what it's for.
Yeah.
And we can't use it for anything else.
Right. So this is a little different than I'm accustomed to, but it's a good question, and to answer your question, we are budgeting for capital improvements right out of the general operating fund.
Because that's where our extra money is, that's where we
it
carry our
is.
surplus.
Yep,
Okay,
yep.
great.
Can I ask one more
Yeah.
question that's less developed, I guess I'll say? But, so the 646 from the capital fund, that's coming out of the general fund?
This year, yes. So that's what I
So
was.
when you're on page 1,
Mhm.
how does that 664 from the general fund become 776?
Yeah, good question, yeah.
46 is coming out of it.
Yeah.
Hope Nobody was hoping to get home in time for like some TV shows.
So
Do the printers.
the 664 on page 1
Yeah,
is just your general operating fund balance as of June of 2016.
okay,
This money that we're talking about that's funding the academy project
yeah.
is something that's occurring in a subsequent period. It's occurring now, months later. Okay? So we've created $646,000 of new money that gets added to a balance that we ended the year with 6 months ago. So it's an old period, and this is a new period, and we're taking the new period money and adding it to the old period and moving ahead.
Which leads to the question I think that we had last time you weren't here, but what are we projecting for any sort of a balance this year?
This fiscal year, as far as I know, we're on budget for fiscal year 17.
No extras.
No major variation, plus or minus, that I'm aware of.
So we shouldn't be able to throw a bunch of money into a surplus
Or
fund.
we can't count on having extra this year, even
Yeah.
if we saw we're 3% or some percent behind, aren't spending as much as we thought we would.
Well, no, we can't count on
Yeah.
it, but it'd be nice to know if it looked like it was gonna be out there. I mean, last year we had some idea.
Is it possible to, John O'Connor does this for the town every month. He gives us a report exactly where we are, this percentage of this fund and this fund, and this is what we have left over. And it changes, and it's always
Yeah.
there, but it really kind of helps get a sense of, if we need to panic, we need to know
Yeah.
ahead of time.
Yes, I did a quarterly report, I think it was.
Yeah, last couple months ago.
And we'll have the next quarter right around the corner. And I'll definitely refine forecasts for the year. Usually we can do that in March and April. I wish I was in John's shoes where he has one entity, one budget. We have 7 boards, 7 entities, and there's one business manager. So it's a different pace in terms of being able to project. But those are good
And you also
questions.
don't have separate programs
Yeah.
that are easy to separate, to pull apart.
Yeah, but that is definitely my goal, is to get there, and we finally cleaned out a closet and we created a room, and we are hiring a new position that was approved by the supervisory union board in the accounting area, and we will be able to do those things that you just asked for on a much more timely basis.
Is that third floor Garrett?
Yeah.
Okay.
So each district, each school has a capital plan, and now you know the pattern. It repeats itself. The one thing that's unique about Green Street is it's the only project where I'm asking you to consider financing, borrowing money. And because it has a borrowing component, there is a debt service line item, and I think we've already looked at it. So this is the only one you will see, but I think it's back on that page 8 in the thicker document. You see the loan payment, and this is of course just proposed, assuming you approve this budget. So page 8, very bottom of the page. This is another source of budget reduction for us. Is you see in total, the very bottom number on page 8 says debt service. It's down 138,000.
We paid
Because
off the last of those big bonds.
Exactly. But there's a little bit of money in there, 7,056. That's the interest payment on the first year of the loan of the $350,000. The following year, that would be about $43,000, $44,000.
And that's laid out on page 8 too.
That's right. So, so that's the capital plan for Green Street, and that's where it flows through the budget. And now that you got the pattern, we can go through the others really quickly. Oak Grove is page 2. If you look at just, now I'm back in the thin capital plan. Page 2, fiscal year 18, Oak Grove. You see we have a plan to insulate the roof. And keep in mind, in general, we try to make capital items $25,000 or greater projects. Not always the case. And you do see security systems at the bottom, Oak Grove of 9,500. So with a smaller school, we have a smaller threshold for capital items. But there's the,
security camera?
we considered doing it, but it was not a planned item, so we haven't done it yet.
We don't have
We do.
cameras at Oak Grove?
They need to be upgraded.
So we have one camera, that's why I'm thinking we have camera, but we
Yeah.
don't have cameras.
Yeah, we don't have
And
a
it's not,
system.
yeah, I mean, it's not a very, not very accurate. I mean, this is updating the rural system front and back.
So you'll see in your budget here, Oak Grove, when you get into your detail budget, just like with Green Street, you go to the building maintenance section,
Page 21.
page 21. We are using a common convention. If you were looking at account numbers, it's the one that ends with a 441-0005, and it says planned capital improvement. So in every school, you have one of those codes, one of those accounts, and that's where you see $52,500. That's where the money's coming from to pay for those projects. And then we have Academy, and the same pattern on Academy is on page 3.
And
Academy,
David, your point about window replacement, you can see
Yeah,
there's
there they are.
45,000 and then 50 and 50 in subsequent years.
How many
so-
windows will that do? 3?
No.
yeah, these are the worst of the deficient, R value, low R value, and it is these block window walls. Is, Mary, do you recognize? I think it is only 3 or 4 rooms.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, Andy pointed the rooms out to me, and he's
At least
had.
it's more, it's
That's Oak
rooms
Grove.
rather than
Yeah.
rooms.
Yeah,
It's
it's
pretty, but inefficient.
It's expensive.
that's a long-term investment. So again, if you wanted to find that 110,000 in the Academy budget, you do the same thing. You just go to the 05 is the school, and you go to the 2600, which is the building,
Page 27.
page 27. In planned capital improvements, there's the 110,000. So to wrap up this section of the budget brings me to the article that I'm proposing you consider. I do have a copy of an article. It's just the first 7 lines. It's not the whole page. So I've tried to take the most efficient path to getting approval for financing. And Ron had shown me several votes that the Brattleboro Town School Board and then the representative town meeting folks considered at the annual meeting. So if you look at this and then you remember what boards have done in the past, the difference is the projects that I reviewed, there's about 4 of them, were 5-year terms. And I thought that a 5-year term would be a little steep for debt service payments. Given,
70,000.
given that the useful life of this investment it should be 20 years. So to finance a 20-year life over 5 years is hard on those taxpayers that might only be here for another 5 years. That's one way to put it.
There is, yeah.
Well, it also means that there's money out of we have to find that money every year. We start off with whatever that payment is
Right.
in the hole.
Right.
We have to find revenue for it.
So there's a statute that it's relatively new, and I haven't actually used it before, but so I did a lot of checking with legal counsel. It's I cited it at the very bottom where I put notes here. It's Title 16, 562.11. That's powers of the electorate. So that article, if you read the statute, is essentially phrases the article to consider the electorate given the board authorization to borrow in these terms.
So the terms you're going with are 10 years instead of 5.
10 years, and the statute says up to 350,000. So that's why I have that number there. And all of the numbers that we've talked about, the 596,000, the 30,000 being drawn from reserve, all of those numbers are also sort of limited by this cap of 350,000. If we could borrow more, I would probably recommend it.
Mm-hmm.
But if we wanted to borrow more, we would have to go through a full bond vote. That's an Australian ballot format. I don't know if you've gone through that. I've gone through many of those, and they're rigorous. You know, much more involved in terms of the town office coordinating a separate vote. This vote is just one article out of your many articles at town meeting that the electorate can have a voice vote or a ballot vote right off the floor at town meeting and authorize you to borrow the 350.
So we show 1 year of no debt. And
A
then,
little bit.
Just interest.
We
no,
actually,
but in our bottom line, we paid off of all of our debts basically this year.
yes,
But we're asking to go back into debt.
yes, we are, and yes, you know, when useful life
Perpetual process.
when useful life is matched to debt, and you have paid all your debt, usually that means there's a looming useful life that's ready to fail, and it needs
This is all the more reason not to borrow money until something
a
fits.
friend. Yes, it needs financing. And that's where we are with the 1929 steam system in this building.
We got
Yeah.
steam.
Makes you think of that Mike Mulligan in that book.
Mike Mulligan was steam
That
shovel?
steam shovel.
Yeah,
So do
that was
you
a long
need
time ago.
action on this?
It's about
And
1920.
we have to
I would,
decide.
Yeah, what
I'd
happened?
rather wait to act on this until we've gone through and looked at everything else in the budget. Because if we find some things to cut or other reductions or savings, we might be able to lower that from 350.
Okay, so let's table that for a little bit and go to the rest of the budget discussion. Frank, do you have more that you wanted to walk us through? Or-
I think well, the other related to this, I just wanted to make sure, Ron had reviewed with you an award letter from Clean Energy Development. You had asked for a couple of edits, which were good edits, related to just the entity. I have that document. I'm hoping that you're okay with signing it. It was basically substituting out Wyndham Southeast and putting in Brattleboro Town. We wanted to see the entity. The other thing I wanted to mention as part of this budget discussion is the design work for the Green Street project. The folks that did the energy audit that we reviewed back in August, September, the lead engineer was Chris Hebb with this Dynamic Integrations. I'm recommending that we move ahead with a design contract for him to get us in a position where if we have a favorable vote at town meeting, we will have a design in place and a path to bid. We all know how important it is to bid in April. If you're going to try to do a June project, you don't want to be bidding in May or June. So we would need to move right away, so.
Okay, and would that include an informational packet? They usually have tables at the back of the room that are lined with,
Yeah.
handouts. And
Yeah,
this would probably be
yeah.
one of those handouts for the town meeting reps.
For the informational meeting, yes, that's all part of this project. Yep, so we don't have to do that now, but at some
Do we
point.
need to do a motion on that letter,
Uh,
approving the letter?
Yes, if we do a motion to approve the letter and a motion to approve the design contract. But
I
again,
was confused. I think that's okay, Dave, to do without looking, if we go ahead and approve this letter, and the letter was receiving the money anyway.
that's right, the letter is,
For the design build
Right.
contract.
Yeah.
One's the contract and one's the letter to receive the grant that the Brattleboro Town School Board would receive it as opposed to the Wyndham Southeast Supervisory Union.
Yeah.
So we could have a motion to receive, or to approve that letter and to also move forward with the contract.
You do, yes, so moved.
Do we have a second? Any discussion? All in favor?
All right.
So that part's done, and then we'll come back, we'll table and come back to, as Dave's pointing out, on
the article.
the article
So,
pending any other discussions that we might.
Can I have a question about the article? The article says up to 350.
Mhm.
Doesn't that assume that it could be far less?
Yes,
yes.
So then we
but based
could-
on what
Oh, yeah, yeah,
I
you're
just
right.
shared with you,
Right.
Okay.
So,
I've just,
so don't we
I've
have
just.
it built in? I'm questioning the need to table it. Don't we have it built
Yeah,
in
so
that
we
it
don't
could
have
be
to-
less?
Oh, I see, yeah,
If-
good.
if
All
it-
right, so
if
make a
we-
motion, Todd.
if-
Yeah, we're willing to finance the boiler if we can't find more money to pay for it, sure.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So
Yeah,
go ahead and make a
so-
motion, Todd.
well, I make a motion that we
Approve the warning.
approve the warning by the.
The wording on the
warning.
warning.
Yeah.
I'll second.
Yeah.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Good catch.
Aye. There we are. 3 things done.
Okay.
Franz?
There was something that came up at the last meeting that I thought didn't get resolved, and I was wondering if it was going to be addressed again tonight, which was something about the number of equalized pupils.
Oh,
and
yeah,
why
because
it's
Frank
being so
wasn't
much
here.
lower. And just for my education,
Well, it's an education for everyone.
866 pupils, how did they get equalized so low?
Yes, Frank, walk us all through your many discussions. Like, he did this on the phone for me, and at the end, I just kind of
It's
said.
really
"Okay,
hard
we
to
need
understand.
Well, in a very kind of a general way, I can go into the state statistics and get the exact numbers, but in general, to answer your question, when we look at the second page of the thinner handout, it's the tax page. So I've got my number, page 2, and you see on line 15A, that's, I think, maybe the number you've already referred to, 866, and how do we get down to 788? The first answer to that explains most of it is the 866 includes, I believe it's over 100, it's like 114 120 pre-K. I can look that number up, but that includes 120. But the equalization formula only counts them as a 0.46 per individual. So 0.46 times 120 is the biggest explanation of that reduction, or nearly 60, more than 60 kids.
But why did it change so much from last year? I guess that's really the question. I know about the 0.46, but did the composition of the school population change that much?
No, it has to do with Act
What are our
166.
real numbers? What are the real numbers last year and the real number this year?
Oh, well, that's the 861 and the 866 on that.
Yeah,
So
so
there's
it's
the-
only changed by 5.
That's
Yeah.
5, there you are, Franz, that's the real answer. The real numbers is 5, so it's,
Yeah. And the equalization, the reason why the equalization is so different is this Act 166 that brought in new counts to all districts across the state associated with this mandatory, what they call universal pre-K. The Agency of Ed overstated the number based on their estimates. And the reason why they did that, they wanted to err on the high side so that it didn't discourage boards from looking for those partnerships with pre-K providers, because the higher an equalized student number, the lower the tax rate, just because it's money divided by kids. So that was one thing, in that it's essentially an overstated number, and it's nothing that we control. We don't contribute to that. That was something to do with a law that had to do with the way in which pre-K was phased in to the school budgets.
So the numbers were wrong last year?
I wouldn't say they were wrong. Yeah, I would say that it's attributed to the way in which legislation assigned weights to pre-K counts, and the Department of Ed's estimate of those. But more importantly, probably, I would say, and again, I can only say probably because no business manager, no administrator does the equalization calculations. We don't have access to it. They are a component of family income. The tax department works with the Agency of Education, and they use tax and family income statistics to assign weights to all of the resident students that are counted. And Act 46 had a provision that went into law that wasn't optional. There was a lot more to Act 46 than what many people are aware of, but one of the provisions of Act 46 was the hold harmless provision was going to be expanded. So hold harmless is this, I don't know, have we talked about the 3.5% hold harmless provision in terms of counting kids?
I have.
Okay, I couldn't remember if you were at the Brattleboro Union Finance Committee and we talked about that or not, but the point is if in a simple illustration, if you have 1,000 kids, which we at one time did here at Brattleboro Town, and if our population went down to 900, that's a 10% drop in 1 year. Well, the state would have given us an equalized number, aside from poverty and lots of other things. They would have given us an equalized number that's only 3.5% lower. They would have given us a 970.
That's creating phantom students.
That's right. So if our real number is 900 and they gave us a statistic of 970, it mitigates the impact on taxes. But the fact is there's this what they call phantom student count. Well, they're unplugging that over the next 3 years, and they've expanded the phantom student count to a 10% variation. So now we don't have that buffer.
But we didn't have that last year.
Well, we have had phantom students. It depends on what period you're talking about. Phantom students are accumulated over time, and when you have a net increase, that means you don't have phantom students in that year, but you've got to pay off your
20 years ago.
Your 20 years, well, it wouldn't be 20, but it would be 10 years ago, it would be 8 years ago, and so on. So those two factors, and then there are many other factors, and if you're interested in the details, I believe it's Title 32 and it's a Section 4000 that really spells out the details of the school funding formula and the equalization ratios.
So, well, just on a purely mathematical basis, if the number of actual honest-to-God students didn't change much, then either the proportions in the different categories had to change, or the weighting factors had to change in order for the equalized student number to change. So did the weighting per student change from last year to this year?
In the pre-K element, it did. Yeah.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. And then...
What was the weighting last year? I didn't realize that would be subject to change year to year.
Yeah. You would want to talk with Brad James at the Department of Education, and he would give you, he's the guy that does it. And of course, he's only implementing the state law. But he's the individual that the state relies on too.
Is there any effort underway at the state level to make this more complicated?
Actually, yes.
Yes,
Yes.
there is.
Weren't we aware of this last year?
There's a conversation about changing the way that rural students are weighed. so that would make it a little more complicated.
We had a sense
We
last
knew it was
year
gonna
that
shift because
the
we talked
numbers
about-
were really good, and we couldn't anticipate that they would go down this low. But we knew, I think
We
we
knew.
talked about it was a
We
one-time.
knew last
We
year.
talked about it as a
Boost.
one-time thing.
And that's why we put the reserve in for the 646,000.
That's why I pushed last year to go for even more, but you guys didn't quite.
One of the things about a million.
Todd, did you have another question or no?
No, that was it.
Okay, so
Almost reached my talking limit.
I'm thinking we would be well served to go on to the idea of talking about the tech position in the budget and the social worker. And our needs, this is the kind of the gist of the conversation that I think is really the most useful of our time with the administrators and the board, of the idea of the goal of what do we have for problems and how are we trying to go at that. And part of our goal setting way back in August was talking about the effects poverty has had on our schools and how to deal with that. So that goes directly to this question of social worker, and then the technology, we've always been talking about how to integrate and how to do that. Before we start this, can we know, Ron, maybe an explanation of what do we have in the district right now for technology? How is it currently integrated? Who's in charge of that? And
Well, these people would know more directly than I. We have a tech coordinator for the SU. We've got a position at the high school with an assistant at the high school. We've had people that have received stipends, that are teachers, that are doing above and beyond. I think we're getting away from that with this new grant that was funded to allow for the position at Green Street and part at Oak Grove. Brought in a person that could do these functions without, just a minimal stipend for a teacher that doesn't really have time to do this work.
so right now, there isn't somebody in any of our schools that comes in and says to a teacher, this is how we can use an iPad, this is the program, and this is how it would be taught to the students.
Well, what we have at Oak Grove and Green Street is Greg Montgomery, who's recently hired technology integrationist.
And that's funded by a grant.
Yes.
And that was for 1 year.
He's been at Oak Grove 2 years, this is his second year at
Right.
Grove, and he's been.
And it's in the proposed budget to continue.
And
And his salary was $25,000.
Well, that would be
What was the grant?
60% of his position would be at Green Street in this proposal, and then the other 30 or 40% is in the Oak Grove section.
I guess my question is, did the grant cover healthcare, retirement, and all the other things that an
The
employee
grant
would?
this year did.
It was the whole package.
And is there something in Academy that's similar? Do we have a technology person at all?
As Ron mentioned, we currently have a teacher who is a full-time teacher, but they receive a small stipend to assist. I want to be careful to point out that that's not necessarily intended for guidance for teachers on technology integration, more as additional support for the use of technology to supplement what our SU technology specialist does.
And the SU technology specialist is in charge of the hardware and making the software work with it, not so much teaching somebody how to use it.
Well, troubleshooting, he does that. He'll do that with people. And I think he does that at Academy in particular. He hasn't had to do it as much in other districts because of the tech integration people.
And the other schools in our supervisory union don't have this position.
Contracted services in some cases.
So maybe you guys can speak to what you have seen.
Yeah. So for Green Street this year, it's really been a game changer in terms of moving technology in a proactive way, in a really dynamic way. So I asked Greg to put together a document of kind of what he's been working on this year. So it's two-sided. And this is developing. As teachers gain more comfort level, not only with their technology, but with the technology integrationist, more ideas pop up and more initiatives and programs begin. But to summarize, Greg has focused on professional development with staff, so providing whole staff professional development around technology at staff meetings. Modeling technology in the classroom, how to use certain technologies, the iPads, the Chromebooks, the boards, and then the different apps that you can use within the three. He's co-taught units with teachers, as well as provided support and planning of lessons. He's taken on data analysis with SBAC. He's provided the overall technical assistance. So really, Jeri does come to Green Street now and then, but not as often as he was. Jeri would come to solve a problem, and he's plugging in a extension cord for a teacher. He's not having to do that because we have Greg right here who's, providing that technical assistance as well. I think more importantly, he's getting teachers out of a comfort zone and taking more chances. We have teachers this year who had a great amount of technology in their room who are now really using it in an advanced way with their kids. So really getting educators to take chances. So I feel like in these short, few months, he's really upped the level of performance in our teachers' ability to use the technology. And as comfort level, continues, I see him expanding more and more. That document kind of dictates some of the specific projects that he's been working on.
I think there's definitely increased student engagement because the technology has been here, but now there's somebody to help guide kids through that and guide the teachers through that as well. So we have all of these things that are so cool, we've heard about them, but how do I make this a reality in the classroom? And it's pretty easy, you just send him an email and he'll show up at your room and be like, all right, let's do this, Totally flexible, he'll come into the classroom, he'll pull kids out. He works a lot with Diane, who does a lot of enrichment, and the things that those kids have put together have been pretty amazing, and they've been shown at All Schools Sing. So kids are totally into it, which is great because it's increasing their love of learning using all of this technology that we have available.
So I think we've seen a glimmer of the work, and it's really been great work. I think the potential is much greater. And that's why I wanted to dedicate funds to the budget, because I think I've seen what the change has been in a short few months, and I can see it really expanding over time through this one position. And I think the overall development of our educators has increased in a short period of time in terms of their own acclimate to using the technology effectively.
Jeri, have you seen something similar as well?
Oh, very similar to what Mark has put together. I think about approximately $30,000 in the last 2 years that has been purchased for technology for Oak Grove. Chromebooks are now a 1-to-1, grades 2 to 6. We have other laptops available and iPads available for K1s. We have smart boards in every room, and without, you can, the premise that, build it and you buy it and they will use it is not always the case. And, Mark referenced having what I refer to as kind of tech-phobic adults that have been teaching for a long time and are not necessarily really comfortable with technology and the use of it. And he has brought them to the level of now they're comfortable, creating their own class blogs. He's working on redesigning our website. Act 77 with proficiency-based grading, personal learning plans or PLPs that is happening at the high school and the middle school. Greg has just started with our sixth graders, so that when they're entering exams, that they already have a head start on their PLPs. So that work is happening. One thing I'd like to also comment about that was mentioned at the last meeting, prior to me being at Oak Grove, apparently I remember that there was discussion around the librarian media specialist being reduced to part-time. And what I heard from someone on the board, I apologize, I don't remember who, but that the idea is that, well, to keep them full-time, the proposal was that they would become a tech integration / media specialist. It's important to know that at Oak Grove, my librarian media specialist is also my BEEP person, my enrichment coordinator, because BEEP is no longer at Oak Grove. That individual is now full-time, I think, at Academy or whatever, so it needs to be shared. And so she picked that up. So she's picking up some of that enrichment, as well as when Greg's not in our building. She definitely is still helping teachers and helping students with technology, digital citizenship. Citizenship is a big part of what she does with students. So with the money that we're investing in technology to help students transition with transferable skills going into the middle school and then, of course, the high school, the assessments that we're doing with technology, Greg has, the need is there for our teachers as well as for our students. And he delivers. Being at the middle school, I know that we're not supposed to be putting in positions with a person in mind, but years at the middle school trying to find highly qualified technology integration specialists is very, very difficult. And, we have quite Greg he's fantastic, the staff has just really come a long way in a year and a half. It would be a loss for our schools as well as this district to lose out on him as a person, but definitely as for the position.
Any questions by the board here?
So it's full-time between the two schools?
Yep.
Is it?
The proposal is full-time.
The proposal.
I think right now he's 80%. I think he has one day that he's not.
Yes, I think, yeah.
Would there be any way, if he was full-time and this position was funded by the town schools, that he could wind up accessing or giving some of these services to Academy, or is it that he'd just be too busy between the two schools?
I think at this point, it's fair to say he'd be too busy between the two schools. Just seeing how his popularity is taking off and people are really accessing him. But
So
I think just like any employee as part of, Brat Town, we all want to work together, and I think we can find ways to
I look at like the
incorporate.
1% or something, is there
Right.
any, or professional development?
Right.
Is some of the stuff that he's doing for you, is it being shared on to all the other ones?
We certainly can do that, and I think that would be a great experience. But in terms of like dedicating specific time a week,
Tuesday, 8 to 12.
right, to Academy, I would say probably not, based on the schedule being developed.
He's budgeted
Tax place.
60% of Green Street and 40% of
Right.
More questions?
What's the source of the grant funding right now?
It's school improvement through Title I.
And is that an unreliable source of the future?
We've been told that this is the last year.
Sounds unreliable.
And it's something that's done throughout the enterprise where schools would like to try something, they don't have the resources, so they get a grant for a few years, and then they convince the school boards to, because it's valuable, it obviously is necessary, and it's useful and helps the kids, so we put it in the budget. I think my hesitation is purely around what we've been hearing for the last few years about numbers are down, the budget is up, the thing that drives the budget is staffing. And at what point do we have, do we start to say, no, we really need to reduce? I mean, I guess, that's really it. I mean, I don't question that this is really valuable. I do, I wonder about how effectively another model using current resources, or maybe contracting like some of the other schools do, where we don't take on an entire salary. And with expectations that it continues year after year after year. Because this is how it happens. And it's not based on anybody wanting superfluous stuff. It's based on changing needs. I mean, the SBAC requires kids be competent on computer. And the other test, the one that the other half of the states use, they found that the kids that did it on paper did better than the kids that did it on computer. So obviously you want the kids to be competent on the machines. I mean, there's a need, but is it something that...
I think over time too, like employing somebody like Greg right now in this budget would be between the two schools. But I think as competence increases at the schools and teachers are engaging within the technology, then that's the time you can look at this resource to start spreading out into other schools, like Academy. But I think this is he's such an incredible resource of information, and he's going to school at Google to do this stuff. He's really on the cutting edge of technology, and it feels like we're getting something that I had initially tried to hire somebody to do AST and technology, and we went through that process. We interviewed 10 plus people. We could not find anybody with the technology skills. And then when he came in, it was like, well, he's perfect for technology, but he doesn't necessarily have the teaching skills for teaching a intervention literacy block or math block. So then it was like, okay, there's this grant. Let's figure out a way to
teach him,
have the best of both worlds. And
So Mark, you sold me on the idea that what he's doing is incredibly valuable. I don't have any question on that. I'm struggling. I hear David, and I agree with David in general, but I'm willing to even say, okay, yeah, this is definitely one place where we have to expand.
Yeah.
But I'm not sold on why you can't go to the 3 schools. Why?
I think eventually he will be able to. I've seen this in other districts where they've had a person for 2 or 3 years, and then they're able to shift resources to more academic support. And in one case, the person working in a neighboring school.
You've seen it with technology
Oh,
integration?
yeah, definitely. Definitely. And just as Mary was saying, there are people that receive stipends that they could be working with Greg, this individual, and gain a lot from him in the interim time.
I think a coaching model would really easily be able to put in place next year with Academy, like teachers coming, observing, and then doing some, 1% work on the side.
Right.
So can we make that a requirement kind of?
Well, if I can, when I hired Greg a year ago, he was working up at Dover, he was working up at Halifax, so he was at Dover for, I believe, 7 years. And I was like, well, how are you gonna, he lives here in Brattleboro, how are you gonna balance all these different schools? He said, Dover is at a place now that technology is just second nature. Because he has been able to, he brought them from more of a, they had computers, but they really weren't utilizing them. And brought them, the staff to a place that they're very comfortable. So this year, he's still up at Dover, I think 1 day a week. Next year, he's dropping Dover because he feels that, I'm not trying to sell him out of a job right now, but he has brought them to a place that that's just part of their everyday best practice that they're using. So going to your question about Academy, I see that happening as our staff, that he's become more efficient. He's going to be able to, we're going to be able to use him more across the district.
Can we make sure somehow that the coaching and that happens and it's part of the professional, I don't know when you lay out professional development for the next year,
All
whatever.
the time.
Is it all planned for next year
No,
already?
No,
That's
but
what I'm
things
saying.
like, projects like this, we implement all the time.
And he could easily be part of our PD strand,
Right.
providing PD to not only Bracktown, but WSESU.
Because a couple of years ago, I really felt, in just walking into the schools, that Academy was way ahead, technology-wise, than, say, Green Street was. And walking through and looking, I don't know what Oak Grove at the time, just looking at what kids were doing and talking to other parents and looking at my own children and all that. And I feel that we should be, at least in the Brattleboro town schools, all of us pretty equal, that by the time they walk out, that they've all had exposure at a pretty solid pace. I'd like to see with Act 46, and if we do merge everybody, I'd like to see that with Dummerston and Putney and Guilford and Brattleboro, and who am I missing?
The one that's gone away.
Anyway, that we're all the
Hasn't
same
quite
there.
disappeared.
And I agree, I agree with that. I just think for this budget that we're proposing, I was assuming the model that we've been working under this year and working with him, and it's worked really well. We had that amount of time being here with our students and our teachers. So that's why I plugged that
And we're just challenging
percentage
that.
of time, right?
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of budget and spreading it out and having access, but also this position comes up as a reflection of shifting times and needs, but you could also assume or stretch the logic to say, we're not necessarily adding a position that we're gonna carry forward for 15 years. He could, if he's that good, he will work himself out of a job. And you know what I mean? If he gets these two schools established and then we're training staff and then they're integrating and then Academy comes on board, you know, in 3 years, we might be able to question and say, maybe it's time to move on.
The thing that I think is funny on that, I'm glad you told that story about Dover and all, because to me, using technology all the time, I'm constantly challenged to learn something new. And every time I have something down, there's a new program out, there's something that can be done better. So to me, I don't see that technology ever gets itself moved out, it just gets worse. It's just,
No, but you're
it's worse, we have to learn something new all
If
the
you're
time.
establishing a workforce, if you're establishing a team of people that are taking on these challenges, and they get to a level of proficiency, and that now there's 3 people in each school that,
That's what I'm saying,
Right.
Todd, is I never get to proficiency, so I'm just doubting that everybody ever gets to
well,
proficiency.
you might be a special case, Jill.
I
I'm
must be.
thinking of,
I think there's a
thinking of professionals.
generational break here. right? So
I must be.
But it might be able to get to the PD level ultimately where someone's coming in and consulting or running trainings for crews that are already established in each school. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
The other part of this that strikes me, and it doesn't have anything to do with saying anything bad about this position, I think we should go with this position. But we keep finding more things that kids should learn, and that they should be doing, and that we should be challenging, and we should be putting out there. We don't take anything away, you notice, from what's in the day and what's on the table. We just say, oh, gotta get this technology
It
piece in
gets
there.
shifted.
too.
But what's unique about this position, it's integration. So it's not like a separate course. It's how do you integrate technology into your literacy block, into your math.
We could be taking inefficiency away. So
Right.
don't, like, you know.
And by taking inefficiency away, you may be freeing up additional time that you did not know you were able to do.
So it's not another topic, but it's just how to use technology amongst all topics.
Okay. And we're talking only, I'm sorry, go ahead, Jerry.
Well, just like our Reading Street curriculum, for example, there's a lot that's already online and using technology with that curriculum. And so, more and more teachers are actually now using that piece of technology. That's part of their everyday curriculum that they may have kind of scrapped or, made Xerox copies. It'll stay Xerox.
Yeah.
Were you thinking of money when you said that? We're adding money and we're not taking money away, or?
No, I was thinking of time
General,
and demands,
right.
but money's fine too, throw in there. But, yeah.
Well, like
But
the
no,
bottom-
Mark attended to the other one, he combated my.
Oh, yeah, well, and I also was gonna add, right, today, we're talking about 3 schools, and maybe next week or in the month to come, we may be talking about 6. And I'm sure that the levels of technical support in the schools differ. And maybe this is going to be like a round robin, you know? And as you pointed out, you get proficient, you have a team of proficient people in one school, and you just keep going in this, you know, entire circle of,
Well, that's why
Three
I'm
and now
talking
6.
professional development.
well, that's what I am too, yeah.
Well, and when we
But
talk
next
with,
year, we'll still be the same next year.
when we
if
talk with
there's a
principals
transition
about
to
Act
funding
46
this
and
position.
things that they would like dream of, tech integration was the top of many lists.
Sure.
Because we do spend a lot of money on technology.
So I don't think we need to have a motion, but is it the consensus of the board that we leave the budget
Pretty much.
that's in this
I
position?
think we
as it
talked
is?
ourselves into it.
Yeah,
Okay.
we did.
So the next budget, or the next item on our
That doesn't mean we
agenda.
don't have the opportunity to question it later, does it, or does it?
Are we,
Just don't do it now.
till the
You're
next?
just you're making fun of me.
No, now we're laughing with you.
No, he's making fun of me over
I'm
there.
not,
Are
no.
we still?
I'm saying we're not locking, I mean, there's.
No, there's
so
always
many-
opportunities to.
There's other opportunities to laugh.
No, but the point that we made earlier is that we wanted to have a discussion before hiring somebody, so that's what's happening, and it's good.
Yeah,
I
okay.
declare
it's a
it
good
good.
I would like the record to reflect that I was not
good.
mocking Jill.
Dave was trying to say something. What do you
Yeah,
want to say?
I have some other
Was it
questions
something
about the
serious?
budget, so if, are we-
Well,
if,
the next item on here is social worker on the agenda. Is that okay? It's
we were gonna get a report about what social worker does.
So I think,
I assume
Into the-
in relationship to
in
the
the
human
budget.
services.
in the budget.
yeah, but
Yes.
I think in the future meeting on February 1st, we're actually going to have the current social worker come and have a
Yes,
discussion.
so D is social worker at Academy. What results have been seen from having the grant paid social worker currently there? And I think Mary's prepared to say something, possibly. And then C is that she'll be coming on 2/1 unless the board didn't want her to. I went ahead and scheduled that without all of you saying yes. Okay. So C will check off that yes, she's coming. That's okay with everybody. But do we have anything you want to say, Mary, about the grant paid social worker that you have at Academy and what you've seen and why you guys are putting that in the budget?
Sure. I guess very quickly, she practically day-to-day builds relationships with and supports families and parents so that they can support their children, so their children can thrive in school. That's sort of the purpose of the position. She works collaboratively with teaching staff, but also counseling staff and our HCRS clinician that's on site. She works as a liaison to connect families with community resources so that they can make use of what's available in town. She works as part of our educational support team that needs to talk about not only academic but also social and emotional needs of kids with that family perspective. And I think she also helps school staff to connect families of their students with resources, but she can more articulately than I reflect on what she does on a day-to-day basis on February 1st.
And she's just at Academy?
Correct.
And it's a grant paid position now, and she's full-time right now?
Yes.
And the position is coming into the budget as a full-time position
Yes.
and no longer with any grant funding?
Correct.
But it was offset by another position
Correct. 0.2
reduction. 0.2 being reduced.
Okay, okay. Could she serve as a resource for the entire, the three schools that we?
She does.
Okay.
She actually does.
Or are there grants to get, there's.
She works pretty collaboratively with the counselors and also with our, through our attendance council that meets monthly. And our counselors that have another meeting monthly with the DCF, HCRS, other social service providers. She's been a great resource.
Yeah, that's the part that you had mentioned, Mary, that she's working with the outside agencies, and that's what I've always thought that we needed.
That was your goal. back
Goal,
then.
that
This is
way
the first
back
year of
when.
this?
A social worker, or a
We
social
hired
czar.
her mid-year last year, the money
Yeah.
came through in January, so we were able to hire
And
her.
This
it's
is the
been
first
for a
full
So
year.
this is her first,
I've funded her for a year
February
now.
1st she started.
Okay, that's perfect. That's good.
So are we saying by consensus, we're gonna leave that position in the budget as well?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, especially after we hear from her.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, and I was walking down the
Should
hall,
you
and
go with computers?
no,
Does she know anything
she's
about
not doing the
She
computer.
don't get my computers.
I was walking down the hall at Academy and ran into her. I was like, what do you do here? She was telling me, I'm like, you should come talk to us. So that's kind of how I set that up.
Can I ask if, I also brought a document to show kind of the work that Tracy Benet Parent is doing in our school, and she's making a ton of connections with the community.
So could she come next month?
And I was going to ask if she could come to present
All happy with
her
that?
model as
Yeah,
well.
like-
Oh, yeah.
What's her description?
She's our guidance counselor, but she very much works as a social worker
Yeah.
/ guidance counselor.
And you know what? Not to put yours on the spot, but I'd like to, as long as we're gonna have two of them here, and you might ask whether Judith wants to come as well, if there's anything. But I think we're interested as a board to hear about the whole wraparound, I believe is the term we used. So if Judith feels like she'd have something to contribute and would like to be here, by all means, we'd like. And I forgot.
Catherine,
Good.
I'll just give you this resource from
Probably
Tracy, and
Deb
she'll speak
could
to that,
throw in somebody too,
those
if they have
topics
some.
on February.
Don't they have people that do that specifically?
They have references.
What's your name, Tracy?
So
Tracy Benet.
I'll send an email here to Deb that asks if she has anybody that wants to do that, but you guys will take, Mary and Jeri, you guys will get that to your,
I'm sorry,
BINET.
Joe, can you repeat?
you'll talk to Judith and you'll talk to Kathy.
/parent.
Okay, so,
PERRI.
we're at 7 o'clock and we have a couple things here still up. I'm gonna read through them and we can see if we're gonna keep going because we're at the time we said we normally would stop by, if not before. We have update for preschool preparation, there might not be a lot to say on that, but
I just have a handout I could do when we're ready for that.
you could do that now, hand out. Plans for the future of the Head Start integration within our school might be a longer conversation, but we touched on that last meeting, that we really haven't said, thank you, Kelly, specifically what our goals are eventually for Head Start and what we're aiming towards, and I kind of would like to hear that. Neither Deb nor Andy is here at the moment, so maybe it'd be good to have that tabled until next time.
30 seconds, and then we can continue next time.
Okay, we'll do that too. There's an update on the progress of preschool behavior. That's gonna have to be tabled because Deb is not here, so that'll come next time. Update on the concern from the St. Michael's School folks, you were gonna
Executive
address.
session.
Executive session, so. And question on the solar array, we've already done. Warning articles under new business, we've done. So, I don't know too, if we, before we go too far, planning for the community forum on trauma and how it affects our schools, perhaps that's our social worker discussion for 2-1 anyway.
Yeah,
May I ask a
it really
question on
is.
that?
It is.
What trauma?
Just in general,
Oh,
the
it's a
kids that
new-
come in with trauma.
What
You'll
you talked
explain
about.
What I talk, well, my idea of trauma
Society.
and your idea might be a little different.
But with kids, there's a lot of overlap.
A lot of
So, is
You're
everyone in
shocking.
agreement that we'll call that a community forum next
Okay.
time? It was on our schedule that we were gonna have we were gonna have a community forum this week, but we didn't talk about it, so I didn't see how we could do that. So next week, we will call it a community forum and advertise that, and we'll have discussion then by the social worker of how we're dealing with trauma in the school and what they're doing.
Just to clarify, should folks be prepared to answer questions from community members if it is a forum?
Yeah, and if you've got something, some sort of materials to send around to, I mean, for all of you, you know exactly what that means. I heard it someplace else, so it's not an unusual term to me, but that's the direction that a lot of the thinking around how do we actually help these kids that are not ready to learn, but have come from, difficult backgrounds. And that is now a concept that includes a lot of, well, anyway,
It might
we
be-
don't know what it means.
You're gonna need to start out with a definition of
Yeah,
trauma.
and some flyers and things to go home, and some, think a little bit about how we're gonna get people to actually come.
Is it too
To
short
advertise
notice to pull that off? I mean, when I think about the interventions that are in place already, I think of the STEP program, and those kinds of things. One thing that you folks do really well is address that population in a variety of ways. And I think the behavioral supports and the supports you have are about helping a lot of those kids to access education. It's not like it's a positive thing. And I think it's part of that fabric of social workers and contacting outside services and that kind of thing. And I wonder about, you know, like a Shelley Wilson, the work she does, and Greg Stoller. But then as I start to think of all these people, I start to think 2 weeks is, I don't know, maybe too short of notice to coordinate that much input.
Especially with.
But I think it's all a part of the same picture.
My next question is, what do we still have to do on the budget? Can we dedicate a lot of time at this next meeting, or are we behind schedule here?
On the budget?
Well, what else do we have to do?
No, I know, I mean, I think we're in good shape, we can dedicate time on the budget.
And April 5th, we've got 1% applications is the only thing on the budget, on the and I have the right year, on the work plan, so we might look to the form, do the form in April where people are kind of more likely to come out and about. Because I really feel like I've only heard about this and it's a whole other way.
So the only question about that would be whether we wanted it before the town, for the town meeting reps to hear that before, if they wished.
We could announce it.
Right, but do we want it before they have the budget and they see that we're adding in these positions, or if that's not big deal?
I was gonna suggest maybe we just use next first as a regular board meeting,
Yeah.
provide more information to the
And
board
plan it a
in
little bit.
regards to what is happening in the schools, and then maybe plan a future
Yeah.
As a
Okay.
forum, as a forum.
trauma.
Yeah.
So let's do that.
Second,
So it's let's do 2-1 still, that we'll have at least a social worker
Yeah.
come and anybody else that would like to come from your schools.
yeah, it's still.
And then, and it'd be nice if they could come just because they might get some ideas on
Because I
how,
want to.
that we'd want to present this community forum on April 5th.
Yeah.
Can I make a suggestion, just that if there's any actual data on the effects of the social workers' interventions? You know, it sounds very good, everything you said, but I wonder if there's a way to look at outcomes in some kind of results-oriented way.
It may be something like foster children that have been placed and helped, or how many families or students have been helped. It may be something as simple as that, that she's seen. I don't know that we can show results as in,
Well, test scores would be a little optimistic, but, you know, just some kind of, I'm just thinking in terms of town meeting and what helps people make their minds up. So,
okay, so that took care of D, C, B under there. So that leaves us with E, F, G, E, F, and H. And you just passed out something on,
Yeah, I spoke about this last meeting. This is a document that Frank has developed, and it just specifically relates to the Oak Grove preschool Head Start blended classroom analysis for next year. You've got 47,000 local money in the budget to support this. And so it's a split in terms of staffing between your local budget and EES, the federal money. The para would come from EES. The step para would come from WSESU. Then supplies, equipment, playground. There's a good chance that 15,000 could be supplemented through federal money in terms of grant for equipment. So at the most, we're feeling it would be a $47,000.
why does the SU pay for the step pair?
All of our special ed paras are coming from the SU.
So we've already been assigned.
So that goes into our
That's part of it.
That's
assessment.
your assessment.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so we're paying for that then.
So it's, I think, a very economical way to do it. Quite frankly, I think our goal is to start at Oak Grove. Guilford Central School is very interested as well. I know Academy is interested, but they just don't have the facilities right now. I think that's
When you
part of
say
it.
interested, that means they want to have a preschool.
They want to have a Head Start classroom,
They do.
blended
Head Start.
classroom in their school.
And are we able to take the Head Start and just, because we're serving the whole
Yes,
wide
The whole
community.
county, yeah.
Yeah,
So if we're an Act 46 merged supervisory union,
doesn't matter.
we can put them wherever we
We
want.
can do it now.
We can put somebody in Guilford with Brattleboro
We
oversight.
did that in Putney 10 years ago. They had a blended program, and they decided that it made more sense to do just a straight preschool within the school. We would like to have the Canal Street students, the Head Start students, be in the schools for a variety of reasons, the transition, the educational opportunities in preschool, transitioning into kindergarten are gonna be much more effective for students. So that's the goal, to get them out of Canal Street eventually, into schools.
Jeri, how many kids are in the pre-K Head Start program at Oak Grove?
Well, that's what this is.
We don't have.
Oh, we don't have a number on
It's gonna
that?
be 16.
Okay. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
so this sheet doesn't have the numbers, but
That's
it
what I
will
was
be
looking for.
7 qualified EES students and 8 non-EES, so 15 students.
15, okay. Sorry.
And so there'd be
That's the goal,
4-year-olds,
That's the goal.
right?
That's all.
They would need to be 4 by September 1st with the intention that then they would become kindergartners the following year.
7 EES, and
7 and 8.
And
7
8.
EES and 8 non.
so it's 15 total.
15.
So how many EES classrooms of 4-year-olds do we have right now? How many kids total?
4.
Times some, 4 classrooms of how many?
They reduce the numbers to
Like 12? I'm thinking 12.
Yeah.
So 48 kids, which are largely Brattleboro, but wouldn't necessarily all have to be
Right,
Brattleboro,
right.
right? So if we did one classroom, if we took 7 into academies, we're only gonna get to 21.
Yeah, so Guilford and hopefully Green Street.
Well, I'm just saying 21. We have Academy, Green Street, and Oak Grove. We take 1 into each school,
You're saying 7 in each school.
1 classroom.
Yeah, yeah.
So 7, so there's 21 in the Brattleboro schools. If we do Guilford, we get up to 28. We still got 20 kids
Mhm.
that need
Yeah, Dummerston.
down to 20 minus 17. We're
Maybe
down
the
to
numbers switch,
13.
maybe it becomes 8 and 7, the other way.
That will mess up my math, Ron.
I know, I mean, I guess what I don't want you to do is hold that sheet up a year from now and say, Ron said.
Well, you
that's the
won't be
benefit."
here, so I'll be
I
saying
know,
it too
that's
loud.
why I don't want you to do it. So my point is, we're gonna make gradual shifts as schools can accommodate this transition. And, you know, it may be that some classrooms stay at Canal Street, and, you know.
So
I
that's
don't-
my question, that we've never had this blunt of a conversation. I've only heard, as a board member, things like, well, it'd be nice to have a preschool in each of our grade schools.
Mhm.
And it'd be nice to have a blended classroom, and I've seen heads nod, but I've never heard the plan is to eventually take everybody from the Head Start programs and put them into the public schools.
Mhm.
And we will do that within X amount of years. I've never heard those plans
That's what we're
articulated.
trying to work on. So if we get 1 or 2 classrooms this coming year,
Mhm.
that's a big head start.
But we're only gonna do one.
Let's start.
Ha,
Good job.
ha, ha. But we're only gonna do one this fall.
Well, Guilford and
Oh,
Oak Grove.
one for us, then this one, yeah, okay. So that was more than 30 seconds, but that was very helpful, Ron, thank you. Anybody else have questions on this, or were you all as clear as I was?
I'm still amazed by fire, so you just keep going.
All right, we've tabled G, H is exec, we're done.
Just a brief executive session.
Right, but we're done with this agenda. So for the next agenda, we're gonna have the discussion on the social worker.
Yes.
We do need to approve this budget to go to our friends, to be printed and such.
This
So-
budget? Next meeting.
Well, I'm saying we need to do it very soon. Barb had even indicated to me if we did it tonight, they would be even happier over at the town, because they're waiting for it.
I'd like to get.
Was that your expectation?
Yeah,
That was Frank's expectation, that we might just vote on this budget tonight?
yeah.
No, let's not crush him, let's go ahead and do it.
I
You wanna
I
make
still have a
Frank
bunch
happy?
of questions,
I'll
I
make
don't know
Frank
if you want to.
I move that we make Frank happy.
Well, wait, Dave has questions.
yeah.
We have to make Dave happy too.
Well, and a couple of them I think will hopefully lead to changes. And
So-
I sent them to Frank, I was hoping that he would respond.
So,
Sorry, I didn't see him.
Yeah, I'd like
Well,
one more,
those
I'd like
questions-
one more session as well.
is that okay in the world of the town and what they need for deadline?
I know Jan had said that she needed things by Friday.
You like day after tomorrow, Friday?
Yeah, in order to meet the print deadline.
Sort of puts the
That's what
onus
I
on
thought.
tonight, doesn't it?
So Dave, let's do your question.
I think there's more flexibility than that. I think if you check, I think you'll find there's more time. We talked about that recently, and that was her hopeful
Okay.
target.
Yeah, but we don't have another meeting until 2/1.
Yeah, it's 2 weeks.
So when you talked to her about her flexibility, did that include February 1st or 2nd?
Well, town meeting's the 27th, it has to be out 30 days before, and it takes 10 days to print it, so that's 40 days. So if she had it by the first week of February, it could still be done. It just backs things up for her. But I think, our first meeting, we barely talked about it. We had a little bit of conversation last meeting and then a little bit this meeting.
No, I agree. We haven't looked at it very hard at all.
Yeah, I just feel like we need to.
So your list of questions, will you just read so that we can have,
I
have an idea?
can send it
Is
to
this
everybody. I
the
just
email
sent
that you
it.
had sent previously?
What's that?
Is it from the email that you had sent previously, that, I think?
It's about the energy, the previous, looking at, there are two things. One was look at the actual over the last several years for electricity and for oil and try to reconcile those a little bit more closely to what we have actually spent. Those seem inflated. And the other was just a general conversation about if you go through the budget, pretty much every program and function is up, but the budget is down $1.54 million. And I just need to understand how that's happened.
Yeah, we can go over that.
Do you want to, any potential to do a morning meeting on next Wednesday or Thursday?
Todd and Kim cannot do any morning meetings ever, right?
That's not entirely true, but it depends what time and how long.
Kim is pretty much a never. But
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. I can do Fridays.
we can
Easier
throw it
than-
out at Kim and maybe, so let's,
And Thursday, I could do it like an hour, an 8 to 9. Not this week, but in general.
So like possibly the 26th, next Thursday, 8 to 9?
But was that shift, the question that
I
Dave's
can't-
raising, didn't we talk about that last week with it was the idea of the special ed costs going to the district? And that. and
But we
that-
still have
that's
to
where the
pay.
lower-
Yeah, we still have to pay for our special ed.
Through-
The costs go over to the SU, but then it gets into our assessment. We still use the
Do
same.
you want to, you want to go over that one? That one's pretty straightforward. We can check that one off tonight, I think.
Yeah, I think that that all evens out, and the same with the itinerant people. It all evens out as you go through the budget, so it doesn't really affect the bottom line.
That's right, yeah.
So that's not, my question is, where's the 1.4 million? Where did it go?
Okay,
Because
so,
everything seems to be up.
is it all right if we answer that one as a group? Or you
it's only
wanna
time.
Take that time now? I think we
Killing
can,
anybody?
we can go through that. So, is that a yes?
I think it's better than trying to schedule another meeting.
I think it'd be easier.
I do too. So, the big picture on that is, if you look at page 1, you see
On the big budget.
on the thin numbers, the page 1 is summary budgets. It's all of our revenues and our expenses and fund balance. Yep, there it is, this one. So on page 1, for fiscal year 17, you see the same thing on revenues, a substantial decline in revenues. So you got 15,987 is our current budget, right? 15,987,000.
Yep.
And now we're going down to 14,417. So to explain David's question is just to have to understand that see the 1.651 million in special ed aid. If you see where I am here, see that, and then another 113,000 in essential early ed special ed aid. So that in 17, you can see 1.7 million there if you add those two up. And in 18, it's 0. So that explains how our budget is down so substantially. The major, essentially what is happening is that revenue is going to the supervisory union. The supervisory union is then sending a bill back to Brattleboro Town School District that is about half of what it was. It's down about that same amount of money, 1.7 million. That's how you explain the reduction.
And why is it down?
And this is all part of Act 148 that was passed in 2016. It basically said, the state said, well, we know in 2015 we required supervisory unions to employ people and spend the money, but they didn't match the revenues to the spending back then. They left the revenues at the districts. It's a very confusing way to budget. It's does not follow generally accepted accounting principles and so on. They made a technical correction, Act 148, that says, oh, it's a good idea to put the revenues where the expenses are. People understand that a little bit better. So if you looked at the Wyndham Southeast budget, I know you have a copy of it, you'll see special ed spending is 11 million at Wyndham for all 7 entities, and there's 6 million in new revenues. 1.7 million is from Brattleboro Town. A formula went to Brattleboro Town. Another about that amount from the other small towns, and then the BUHS money is also going to Wyndham. The revenue, the state aid revenue. So that's how Wyndham at one point would take 11 million in cost and send it to the districts. Now they're taking 11 million in cost, reducing it by the revenue of 6 million, and they're sending a $4 million, $4 or $5 million invoice to the districts. That is about half of what you're accustomed to. That is how we go from a budget with regular ed programs level funded or in some instances increased, like you just reviewed in technology, but an overall budget down. And where you see the few numbers, there's only a few of them for special ed, but if you go into the bigger pile of data and you look at special ed in the district-wide budget, so that would be on page, there it is, page 9. You see an assessment from the SU that was 3 million, and now it's 1.6 million. Down 1.4 million. Okay, so how did that happen? It happened because you lost the revenue that went with that. That revenue went to the SU, and in the end, the net effect is, when you go to the tax page, and you take spending minus revenue divided by kids, it's the same position. You've lost revenue, but you've lost the same amount of expense, and that's how come our tax rate is not substantially different, even though spending is down. The other areas where you would see changes in special ed, remember I said it's about 1.7 million, well that was 1.4. Thank you. You look at the schools and you look at the paraeducators, special ed paraeducators are all 0. That, again, all that cost is at the SU level, so that accounts for the rest of the total change.
So this is, again, I really there's just a denseness in my mind that won't grasp this yet. But if so that one, like just with the special educators, we still have that. They're still here working in the schools.
They're employed.
But it looks like here we're not paying for it.
Funded through the SU.
You're paying
okay, so it's through the SU, so shouldn't our SU assessment be up to 1.4 million?
No, it's because the revenue is paying that down. The SU is sending, not an $11 million, and in Brattleboro Town's case, it was that page 9, okay. This year, current year, on page 9, Wyndham was giving you the full cost of special ed programming. Special ed assessment is, you see on page 9 where it says special ed ineligible state aid, it's
3 million.
The 3,093,093, you see that? You see that line there?
So
Okay.
that revenue is now going to the SU. You're only
That's the
getting,
expense.
Oh, so the aid was coming in, so it wasn't on our tax rate. Okay, I think I'm getting it now.
Yeah, so just to complete that thought, if you keep that number in mind, and you go back to the revenue number that we started with, 1.6 million, okay? So if you do the math on that,
There it is, yeah.
that's the net number, and now you're just getting the net number. You're not getting the revenue, and you're only getting half of the expense. In the end, it's the same number of people, the same programs, the same salaries. But as Ron has been saying, overall, at the SU, the special ed budget is lower in fiscal year 18 than it is today. And that is also contributing to Brattleboro Town's lower budget.
And then I hope the last question is when you flip over to page 2, and we've got 14.5 instead of 15.9 for our cost, but, which is another, $1.5 million less. Yet the tax rate is basically the same, and that's because of the lost students and and the no longer counting those, the 166 students.
And,
140, whatever it is.
and just as importantly is line, where's the revenue line? Line, I gotta get some glasses.
10.
I think I.
Line 10.
What's revenue?
Yeah.
2.5 million down
that's
to
it. Thank you.
1.1 million.
Yep. Okay,
So
so,
the offsetting revenue, right?
yeah, see, we don't have the revenue to reduce costs. We reduce costs, but we also reduce revenue, and that nets itself out to be no impact.
Those numbers are very similar, yeah.
Yeah,
These are good questions. It's hard to just look at this
Yeah.
and see.
hard to follow them. Yeah.
They're different questions than I asked about this last year. That's a good thing.
Progress. Does that
Yeah.
attend to all of them?
Yeah, absolutely. If you would look at those energy lines and see if you can take a few million, I don't know if we can
Yeah.
pass it.
Well, yeah, the energy lines, the major impact there is that we went from budgeting at $3.50 oil,
Number,
which
so
had been historical for quite a long time, actually, oil was higher
Yeah,
than
yeah.
that, to a dramatic drop in we're down to $1.56, I think, is my last bid.
Yeah.
And I have been getting the low price. I've been going to.
Yeah, and
February.
working with the town to do that.
So we haven't as a group said, well, let's budget at the historically, 12-year low. And that's why you see, higher budgets than actuals. I have dropped those budgets. We have dropped those budgets, but
And
we
has
didn't
the
go all the way
electricity gone
down.
with the 10%? Because
Yes,
I'm
but
curious, are we
they're-
using more electricity because we've got more technology?
Yes,
That's
and-
happened at my house.
And the rates have gone up, the
The
rates.
electric rates
gone
just
up.
always
Yeah.
go up anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm okay
Good.
with leaving it even slightly higher anyway, because I feel like that gives us
Yeah.
a little buffer that I'm.
Well,
more
it's,
comfortable
and there's a long pattern of those being higher than actual.
Yeah.
Just trying to get closer. Yeah,
So
I mean, we
I
hit it
would
within
be
a
okay
percent, that's
to
pretty
take
good.
a motion to
Yeah.
approve this budget.
Yeah, it's okay.
Mark's making that motion.
I made it, yeah, just my nod.
I'll second it.
And any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Are you taking all the notes now, Mary? Did that pass to you? Thank you.
And we're going with 14,547,425, right?
That's the number.
Yep, give or take a buck or two.
Okay, so then at this time, I would entertain a motion to enter into executive session for why?
After making specific finding that premature general public knowledge would clearly place the public body at a substantial disadvantage.
So, Mark, did you make that motion?
I can, sure, yeah. Second?
Second? All in favor?
Have a stretch.
Aye. So the rest of you can now go home, right? Finally? I'm sorry.
You can't leave, David.
I'll be back.
Mary, if you want to shoot that. Yeah. Is there going to be a decision that she needs to hang around for?
No,
No.